Welcome everybody, and thank you for joining us for this video. We're being joined today, Jackie and I are being joined today by Beth Lease, our Human Resources Director, Kelly Murray, our Curriculum Supervisor, and Bob Rizzo, our Assistant Superintendent. We're here today to talk about the 3 different color plans as well as the cyber learning plan. We're going to go through each plan and talk about what it looks like, how it'll work curricularly, what it will look like, and then some questions about safety and how we ensure social distancing and all those things that you're concerned about. So how about we start with the green plan? So under the green plan, what can we expect to see?
So I can take this one. I think the first thing we can expect to see is that the expectation is that all students would be back in the buildings. There is a safety plan that indicates the sanitation and the cleaning pieces of how each of the classrooms will be cleaned and so forth. And that really just helps to make sure all of our procedures are outlined. So that can be found in the full phased reopening plan as to how exactly all of that would be taking place. It's a little bit too deep to go into right now of all those details. But the general idea is that all students would be back in our buildings, and then we'd be instructing full time as close to as normal as possible, although we all know that this is not the normal that we would like to see.
Thank you. So it sounds like those details are available on the district website for people to see, so they can look at each individual portion of the cleaning plan. In terms of social distancing, I think the green plan requires 3 feet of distance between the desks, and students wear their masks all day. Is that correct?
I'll take that one. Yeah, generally that's correct. And the plan was, whenever the original green plan came out before the governor's orders on July 1st, was that 3 to 6 was sort of like what people were guiding us to. On July 1st, the governor came out with some orders, and on Friday, I guess July 3rd, PD came out with a clarification on that, saying that yes, if you are less than 6 feet in the school setting, you must wear your mask. So that kind of changed what our green is going to look like a little bit.
Okay, great. So green means all students are in school. Staff is not teaching an online portion for a majority of our staff. They're using an LMS, perhaps Canvas, in their classroom with their kids, but not as an online piece that's in addition to what's happening in the classroom.
Correct. So Canvas was approved last night at the board meeting, and we are in the process of moving forward with the contract to finalize that piece. So more information will absolutely be coming with that. But the idea is that the LMS, Learning Management System Canvas, would be used regardless of where we are, and this could be a tool that would support what we're doing moving forward, regardless of COVID or not. And this is something that we looked at, again, before COVID ever hit. That is part of the plan, regardless whether or not it's yellow, red, or green.
Great, thank you. One question that's come up a lot from our members, and again, a lot of concern about safety, is PPE and expectations of staff and of students. Can you elaborate at all on what's expected from staff in terms of PPE and what's expected from students?
So I can speak to the staff piece, is that all staff will wear masks. We do have different types of masks available for our staff if they're not able to wear that typical cloth mask. We do have plastic shields, and Chief Boyer has different styles of those that employees could try to see what works best for them. But it would be the understanding that the staff would agree to abide by all protocol guidelines before coming into the buildings. And it would include social distancing, the typical things you see: coughing, sneezing into your elbow, washing your hands frequently, all those things that we've been taught over the past several months. Those are the pieces for the staff.
Can we expect that administration will let teachers and staff know, how we're managing students in masks and making sure that, we're following protocol and students are following protocol?
We have the guidance from the Department of Health. We have the guidance from PDE as far as how we handle that. And we're going to do our best to kind of push forward what that looks like. But when it comes to our students wearing the masks and ensuring the safe environment, we're really relying on our building principals to get together and talk and build consistency and build plans that work for everybody in all settings as much as possible. Yep.
So I think that gives a good overview of the green plan and what people can expect. It'll be usual Springford curriculum. The students will be there. So changing the focus to the yellow plan, what would it look like? The physical week schedule, students in the building, not in the building. What could our members expect?
So essentially, this is it's called the hybrid model because it includes both online instruction and live in-person instruction. So the idea is that the classes will be separated in half so that we can reduce the amount of students that are in a classroom and increase then the social distancing aspect. So with that, our students would basically be divided into. Some would be in the blue group, some would be in the gold group. The one group would go Monday, Thursday, live in person, and the other group would go Tuesday, Friday, live in person. What that essentially means for the teacher is that they would be instructing live to students 4 days of the week. Now, there are two different groups of students, but they would be instructing 4 days of the week. Wednesday at this point is identified as a planning time so that teachers can have the time without students in the live classroom to be able to plan, develop lessons, instruct, and really use that time to feel prepared for them. They would be using Canvas for the online component. So that's where there's that mix. Keeping in mind that, again, they would have students in front of them 4 days of the week. The instruction that would be included live in Canvas would not be synchronous instruction. It could be using a variety of different resources that we already have. It could be teacher developed videos, but just because that teacher cannot be in two places at once, obviously, that would have to be the asynchronous instruction. One of the areas, and Heidi Rockland could speak to this a little bit better than I can, but I know one of the areas that the yellow team is working on is some sample lessons of what that could look like. Not that they would be required, but that it can give some guidance so that everyone can wrap their head around it potentially, and help to just better visualize and understand what that instruction could look like. But again, it's kind of using pieces of the red plan, such as the LMS, the learning management system, and also pieces of the live plan, the green plan, where students would be in the building. So it's really a mix of the two of them.
Great, thank you. And attached to that, Canvas, the LMS system, the district is looking at getting professional development for teachers, students, and parents, I believe.
Yes, that was one of the great features, and that's something that we heard from both students and parents that they wanted some training for that as well. So there are modules designed for students and for families so that the bulk of that training won't fall on teachers to teach their students how to use an LMS that they themselves are learning as well. So we have focused on making sure that there are supports for families, students, and teachers in this plan. And speaking from the conversations that occurred during the red phase planning, this was pivotal to the decision of the red team, making sure that teachers felt supported, and they felt that this was a plan that we could do realistically in the time frame was really important to all members on that committee. And before we felt comfortable moving forward with the recommendation, we actually met with the Canvas representative and reviewed their recommended professional development plan. And it went through some scrutiny. We looked at it from a lot of lenses to make sure that it was something that was doable and supportive at the same time.
Understanding that students, the two groups will be in the building 4 of the days. That 5th day, Wednesday, they won't be in the building. What will students be doing on that day?
So the idea is that it's still counted as an instructional day so that the calendar is not largely impacted. So students would be engaged with instruction on Canvas, but that would be, again, the time that the teachers can use to plan for what's going to be done on Canvas. One of the challenges to the yellow plan is making sure that we can balance the instruction for the students with also just the ability for teachers to have time to plan. And that's one of the challenges. So having that day is pivotal so that we can make sure teachers have that designated time to plan So the students would still be working online on Canvas from home, but the teachers would be using that time to plan and develop and write their lessons.
Great, thank you. Now, I know under the yellow plan, the PPE mainly is the same as under the green plan. In terms of social distancing, it looks a little different because there are a lot fewer students. Under the green plan, students would need to wear masks anytime they couldn't manage the 6 feet social distancing, which would be in the classroom. They'd have to wear their masks. How about under the yellow plan?
I can take that one. I think as a general rule, the idea is that at any point in time when 6 feet can't be maintained, that's when the masks would then be worn. So the idea, as you mentioned with the yellow plan, is with fewer students, that 6 feet can be maintained much easier. So as long as that 6 feet can be maintained, then students wouldn't have to wear masks. But as soon as that 6 feet is unable to be maintained in any environment, in any phase, that's when the masks would then be worn.
And I think we're following the Department of Health guidance where maintained would be less than 6 feet for 15 minutes or longer. Just mere passing in the hallway is a little different than, or entering a space and stepping out versus, 15 minutes or prolonged exposure to somebody.
Great, thank you. All right, Jackie, can you think of any other questions for the yellow phase?
Just with yellow and green, if a student is quarantined, the student will not move into the cyber school, correct? It will be the responsibility of the teacher, just as in any normal circumstance where a student is sick, providing that work while they're home, correct?
Correct. It would really be on the classroom teacher as they go through the phase, the ones that will be in the phase system, to manage that student's homework, progress, all that kind of thing. Primarily because while it is going to be a smooth transition to and from the cyber environment, for 1 week or 2 weeks or however long somebody's home until they get the testing done and everything, it will be a little too disruptive, I think, to that child's programming. So we thought it best that they remain with their teacher in that, using the Canvas platform.
Thank you.
If I could add to that as well, Mr. Rizzo mentioned the Canvas platform. That's why there was such a large push to have that consistently used, regardless of which phase, because it makes that transition easier. If teachers are using that naturally as part of instruction when all students are in, if we had to go in between any of the phases, that has already been established. The classes are already set, the students are already in there, and it just makes that whole process a little bit smoother, so there's more flexibility. And then it also, we feel, will take and reduce the stress on the teacher's end, because you're not learning something right when you need it. The goal is to learn it ahead of time so that people can feel more confident in it, again, both from the students, parents, and teachers' perspective.
Great, thank you very much. So that takes us then into the red plan, the district's red plan, not the county or the state necessarily, which would be an online plan, so 100% online. But that is different than cyber learning, which we'll get to in just a moment. So what can a teacher or a staff member expect under the red plan in terms of students working with them?
So in the red plan, it is the idea that all students are working from home using learning management system Canvas to receive instruction. Now, what's interesting about the red plan is that there's a couple of different avenues to look at it. One is whether or not we're under a state mandated closure, which means we don't have any flexibility and we are mandated to be closed. Second is if we are not under a state mandated closure, so the county is not in the red phase, but we as a district are in the red phase, we do have some flexibility because we're not necessarily mandated to be completely closed. So while I know it's not directly answering your question, the idea is that students are learning from home with some flexibility as needed, potentially for some populations of students.
Great. So in some ways similar to last year where students were at home. Last year was Google Classroom. This year it will be Canvas, working on Springboard curriculum, maybe using the tech series, maybe using supplemental resources.
Correct. Canvas would be the delivery system that the teachers would work from, and that's where students would log in and access all of their content. You can think of this as replacing Google Classroom. It does not, however, replace the Google Suite. So anything that teachers created using Google Suite, whether or not that be Google Slides or any of those resources, can easily be imported into Canvas. So you're not starting from scratch with that. And that was one of the driving factors we came up with, is using the LMS as the medium for delivering instruction, but also having the opportunity to use Zoom for that live instructional piece as well. Again, Zoom or Microsoft Teams, our teachers will have choice with either platforms to use, whatever works best for them.
Great, thank you. Last year, during the crisis teaching online, the expectation was mostly asynchronous with office hours. How does that look different this year if the red plan is chosen?
So this was one of the biggest areas that we really focused on, because it was holistically one of the most areas of need that was reported from families and students. And so this we spent a lot of time discussing what this could look like. Everyone has heard me say that I think flexibility is paramount. So what we wanted to do is make sure that we also protected that flexible aspect within these plans. Because again, being a working mom myself, I need that flexibility while working with my own family at home. So within the plan moving forward for the red phase, there is a schedule that is developed by grade level. And that schedule does increase the amount of synchronous instruction, but there is some flexibility in how the teachers use that. For example, they might see an ELA block, and within that ELA block, at some point, students are receiving live instruction with their teachers. But how the teacher breaks that up, that block up, is going to be up to the teacher. For example, they may choose one day that they really need to do a whole group instruction lesson, and that particular lesson would be focused on all of their students. Another day, they may feel that they need to do small group instruction with their students and may choose to break their entire class up into a smaller group. While some are working on Canvas, they may be working with, say, a guided reading group, using, again, Zoom or Teams. So you will see an increased amount of synchronous instruction from K to 12. The other aspect that we worked in for the elementary level was the morning meeting and an afternoon checkout. And that just brought some consistency for students. One of the areas that parents struggled with the most, and also reported by students, was the time management piece. Kind of just having this wide open time that somewhere in there they had to get their work done. We felt that this brought a beginning, middle, and an end to the instructional day, and also gave opportunities for students to have the SEL component within their day. At the high school level, what to expect is alternating days. For example, it's based on the class period. So on one day, periods 1 through 3 would meet online and have live instruction. The next day, those periods would then be strictly online using Canvas, and then the other periods throughout the rest of the day. So you'll see, again, that schedule that just helps guide the instruction. That is posted in the updated instructional continuation plan. So for specific details on those grade levels, definitely refer to the instructional continuation plan for that.
Great, thank you. So that leads us to the cyber learning option. So this is totally different than the red plan of last year and of this year. Can you give us an idea of what this looks like?
Sure. So I'll take that one. So first, let me just maybe give a little bit of backstory. And if you haven't been paying attention to the board meetings, I provided just a very brief history. Dr. Murray and Mr. Catalano and I met way back in October to talk about the idea of bringing on and expanding our cyber option. And this was obviously before COVID, before any discussion of red, yellow, green plans or anything like that, because the state was at some point going to be bringing forth House Bill 1897, which really pretty much drove that school districts would be required to develop a cyber option, a fully functional cyber option. So we started those discussions then. And the idea was that was not an answer to COVID. That was just an answer to a call for us to move forward and create more flexible options for our students. So we talked about it and we kind of let it sit for a little bit. We revisited it again in January, and then we let it sit, and then COVID hit and it went on a bit of a back burner. Since then, we realized we still need to move forward with our cyber option, but we have to bring our timeline a little faster. The initial discussion was to get it rolling for the 21-22 school year. When COVID hit and we knew the families were not comfortable coming back, we needed to create an option relatively quickly. So we hastened our timeline significantly. What we intended to be about a year to a year and a half worth of planning ended up being about 3 months worth of planning. So we had to move really, really fast. But generally, the idea behind the cyber option is if families are not interested in red, yellow, green, if they don't want to deal with any of that, they just want to have consistency in the way instruction is delivered, they can enroll in Spring-Forward Cyber Learning, which is its own entity. And I guess the best way to probably describe it is it would be our 12th building, if you were. So you have Brooke and Evans and all these other schools. Well, think of Spring-Forward Cyber Learning as another building in the district that students are enrolling in that stands outside of the red, yellow, and green phase. So Edgenuity is the platform that we would use that Spring-Forward teachers will be teaching. They'll just have access to the tools already built in, versus with Canvas, you're getting a great platform that needs to be built. With Edgenuity, you're getting a platform that is already built, and we're just moving some pieces around to match our scope and sequence in our curriculum. We have some short, mid, and long-range goals, and I don't want to confuse too many people with it, but our long-range goals are to really have a lot of flexibility with our staff and our students to be able to provide instruction that is really customized to what their needs are, whether it be internships at the high school or a student with anxiety that we're gradually working on bringing back to the school, so we can have sort of blended offerings. So the goal is to really have a very fluid process between brick and mortar and cyber classrooms to eventually get students where they need to get in the manner that they're most comfortable. The other thing they can do is they can post videos, they can create either team or Zoom sessions where they can connect their students together. One of the things that we've been hearing on a regular basis is that our students need to feel connected. And if they're in that purely asynchronous learning environment, they're not going to feel that connection. So we would ask teachers to create opportunities and really think about that SEL, that social emotional learning piece, and the mental wellness of our students as they're sitting home. But generally, Edgenuity is designed to be asynchronous in terms of the way that it's built, so that families and students have flexibility to work whenever it's most convenient to them. But we would like to see our teachers build in opportunities for students to connect.
Great. So a mixture of some synchronous, some asynchronous.
I know there were some concerns about social emotional learning, not only for our kiddos, but for our staff as well. Any thoughts on that at this point in time?
Yeah. So yesterday, and I guess we met before the end of the school year, and when I say we, I mean members of our social emotional learning district-wide core and coaching teams. We got together for just a quick debrief for the end of the year and what should we be doing next. And one of the things that came out of that, and that was early June, was a need to really focus and be intentional on with how we support our staff, but also our students as we come back to school, in whatever form that is, whether we're all back in the building again after not seeing each other since March, or if we are once again virtual. Because one of the big differences was whenever we went virtual on March 13th, our staff and our students knew each other already. Those connections had already been built. Starting the school year without having built those connections is a concern. We met as our social emotional learning task force to get together and start tackling some of these issues. We met then, we're going to meet again in 2 weeks, and then our task force wants to meet weekly throughout the fall to tackle issues that really are geared towards helping our staff and our students, in a sense, be well. So we're building out a framework that's going to help staff with the first day, with the first week. Really, what does the first month look like? How do we connect? What's the best way to connect? And let's focus on getting to know the students, letting the students get to know you and get to know each other, and do meaningful activities, engage in meaningful activities that's going to allow them to feel part of a community, which is, as you know, much more difficult when everybody's in their home.
Kelly, it's my understanding that the red, yellow, and green plans, we might be flip-flopping in and out of them throughout the school year. And people, I think, need to understand that as well, that in an ideal world, we would like to live in green all the time if the numbers dictated that. But what's your thought process?
I think that piece is hard, but I think it's unfortunately a reality of what we're living in right now. Certainly flip-flopping in and out is not something that any of us want, and it would be done very cautiously and intentional if we needed to. But the goal is to be able to have consistency between our phases so that if and when we do have to flip-flop in and out, there at least is systems in place. For example, Canvas will be one of the consistent features throughout all of our phases, and hopefully beyond COVID, moving forward with that as well. So I think the most important message to convey here is that it's not something that we want. It's not something that we want to flip-flop in and out, but it may be unfortunately something that we have to. So we just want to be as prepared as possible and having as many pre-planning aspects in place so that it makes that transition as smooth as possible for our staff and for our students and for our families.
It's really a challenging time for everybody, but also, one of the biggest glows is I'm just so proud of our staff, at all levels for how we're pulling together to get this done. We are truly more than ever building the plane in flight, and none of us have blueprints or plans for this. We are just creating these things. And as you all know, guidance changes regularly from the state, from our county. We're getting input from other districts around us, and we're just getting a volumes and volumes of information that is changing, and we're trying to meet the demands of all the requirements, all the mandates, and all the best practices. So as we just move forward and things evolve over time, just ask you to be patient, and just remember, reach out if you have questions. Try and stay current with any literature that we share with you, because in the end, we're all in this together, and we have to, we're going to get through this and flourish. We're not just going to survive, we're going to thrive.
And if I could just make a quick comment too, thank you so much to everyone for sticking through this with us and kind of growing through this. And I could not be more proud to be working in this district with all of the amazing educators and just the commitment to our kiddos that each and every one has. So thank you so much. I've said this many times, but it truly is inspiring time to be within the district, regardless of the fact that we're so distant. So just thank you so much for that.
Thank you.
All right, I can't think of any more questions. So thank you to all three of you for all of your answers. And I know that we don't have all the answers, but I think this is going to help people understand all four of the different plans, three of them the colors, and then the fourth one, the cyber learning, bring a little bit of comfort, and then we'll be ready for the next round of questions.